Kevin Gordon here for Autosavant, coming to you from the 2013 Lexus LX 570. And to be honest with you, it's one of the most interesting cars that I've had the chance to drive. And that's because, in a lot of ways, the LX 570 to me is a bit like meeting one of your heroes. You know, you sort of see them from afar and hope that they're going to be as cool and as friendly, and you just hope they're going to be everything that you had hoped and dreamed. But sometimes there's a real letdown with that. Well, I'm happy to report that with the LX 570 there's been very, very few letdowns. What is this car? It is, of course, the Lexus version of the highly capable Toyota Land Cruiser. This particular one is an $88,000 version. It has the luxury package, the Mark Levinson stereo in it, intuitive park assist, and a few other options. Base car is about 80. This one's in at 88, almost 89 with delivery. Of course, powering the LX 570 is Toyota's big block, even though it's not really a big block, 5.7 liter, 383 horsepower, 403 foot-pound of torque V8, which is connected to a 6-speed transmission and pushes around about 6,000 pounds in this instance. It is a highly capable thing, and the engine and transmission do quite a good job on almost all circumstances. The thing that makes the LX 570 as special as it is it's a highly composed on-road car. And as you'll see as we go through some of the clips, we drove it all the way from Philadelphia to Orlando for a Disney vacation and back. It did that trip really without breaking a sweat. It was comfortable. It's capable at triple-digit speeds on the highway. You know, it's composed, but as we've learned in other times we've spent with this car, it's also amazingly capable off-road. It is a beautiful thing in here. I mean, panel gaps are amazingly small and everything's perfectly consistent. The seats are a bit cushiony and couchy, but they're definitely comfortable and very, very adjustable and supportive where you might want them to be. And again, just to be clear, I've yet to touch either the gas or the brake. So far, when I've wanted to adjust my speed, I've done it with a little switch that sits in between the seats. Makes a bunch of racket in the process, but no worse than ABS pulsing or traction control seems to sound in most cars these days. Again, I think the biggest detriment there will be to this is its size in some of the tighter places as you go through this course. But it's actually the big benefit of the crawl control that this has, which is if you put it in its slowest setting, it really does just creep along and allow you to very carefully place it where you'd want it to be. You get height control, suspension control, comfort, normal, and sport. On the highway, sport really does tighten things up a bit, but never takes it anywhere near harsh. And the amazing part about this thing being a Lexus is it has sound deadening like a recording studio in it. I mean, it is whisper quiet when you're driving along. Even you barely sort of get hints of that big bore V8 engine. So as we run along in four-wheel drive low, and I will say that switching between 4 and high just requires coming to a brief pause. The system's worked flawlessly every time we've tried it. Really, all the complaints I've ever had about Lexus vehicles, the seats not being good, all those types of things, aren't found here. The thing really is enormously capable, competent, comfortable, and the big trick is it seats 8. It doesn't just seat 7. You can actually put 3 people across the third row of this thing, and they're not going to wind up crying after being back there for about 15 minutes. The one thing about the Land Cruiser is it's still a truck-based, ladder-based frame with a body on top. One of those rare things, getting to be more rare things these days in the world of SUVs. So as a result, the third row doesn't have any magical tricks as far as folding into the floor. What it does is it power folds down and then power folds up to lay on the sides, which does take up some of the cargo space. But it does a pretty good job getting out of the way, and you still get quite a bit of space back there with the seats folded. The big advantage is at least they do fold up out of the way, and it's not like some of the older, Tahoes and stuff where you wind up having a 60-pound bucket that you've got to manage to get in and out of the car. The thing that's hard to convey is how manufacturers these days can make something that's as pleasant to drive on road as this is, while being as amazingly capable off-road. And in reality, that gets it to probably two likely competitors, and that's the Mercedes GL and, of course, the big boy Range Rover. With the GL, you can't get the extra seats in the back, but finding one of those with the low-speed transfer case is a pretty rare thing. And I don't think that it's quite as capable off-road as this is. The Range Rover, of course, is easily as capable off-road, but you can't get it with the third row of seats, which means, depending on your situation, it may not actually fit the bill for you. Of course, for 2013, Lexus updated the styling on the LX to be a bit more family-friendly. It's got the spindle grille. It's also a big boxy square thing. I mean, the reason why you can sit three people across the third row is because of the fact that the thing is so damn wide. I personally love the looks of it. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are not a fan, that don't like the way this thing looks, but I do think it looks cool. I have to admit, you get sort of visions in your head about being in the UN somewhere in the Middle East and sort of bombing through sand dunes every time that you get in this. And that's sort of the other thing that winds up making this car in some ways more special to me than the Range Rover is. Around me, I see a ton of Range Rovers. In the East Coast, sort of the Mid-Atlantic region, Range Rovers are almost popular, where I think last year they sold 12 or 1,300 Land Cruisers, and you have to figure the Lexus version of it might be even smaller than that, which makes this a really rare car. I mean, it's one of those things that you might not notice, but it is enormously rare and very special, and as a result, it feels to me like one of those cars that's going to age well. If you saw one of these that's 15 or 20 years old, which you also know the thing would still be working at that point, it's still going to be cool. Like that, it just has a coolness factor to it that you can't find in many other cars that cost $90,000. The EPA rates the LX 570 with a combined number of 14, and I would say it's probably the most accurate estimate the EPA puts on a car. Sure, it gets deplorable gas mileage, but let's face it, you're driving around in something that weighs 6,000 pounds with full-time four-wheel drive and is about as aerodynamic as a brick. During our time, at super speed highway cruising, we got about 17 or 18, and around town we've been getting about 14. It's a 14, 15 mile per gallon car when you get down to it. But with all things, there's good and bad. The bad to me seems to be the fact that, of course, because it's a real off-road vehicle with a solid rear axle, you give up a lot of packaging practicality. For example, as silly as it seems, the cup holders are only about this deep, which means if you put anything in them and go around a corner, they fall over. Little thing, sure, but one of those things that if you're going to buy one, it's nice to know before you drive it off the dealer lot. The packaging for the third row is less than perfect, although Lexus has done a nice job of making those seats at least power folding and power get them out of your way. Entry into the third row isn't terrible. You definitely can't do it with car seats back there. So, not the best of things. But on the good side, visibility out of here is awesome. The stereo works well. The infotainment system is probably the best that you're going to find in the Lexus versions. You know, if you don't like those little touchpad, mousepad things that Lexus puts in their cars, the good thing is the screen is so close to you in this one that it's a really easy thing to touch and interact with. The ultimate question, of course, is it worth $90,000 to have a highly capable off-road SUV that, let's face it, most of the time you're going to drive around, you know, city streets. Maybe you'll drive it onto a baseball field every once in a while. And that, I would say, of course, it depends on your circumstance. But if I had the funds, this would be one of the cars very much on my short list to own. It can manage sort of all my family life really well. You know, I have 3 little kids, and this could seat them very easily and still haul around all their crap. I know that it can tow a significant amount if I ever need it to. And like I started, you know, this is sort of, to me, like meeting one of my idols. And I'm happy to say that after putting, let's see, what's the total number? 2,400 miles on it in a week. There's no sort of luster that's been taken off of it. It still is really cool, really special, and something that I will always be jealous to see driving around in traffic. With that, Kevin Gordon for Autosavant.com. Look forward to talking to you guys soon.